listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins.
Hello, how are you doing? I am here with you at 100 Words or Less, the podcast, and I'm Ray Harkins. And I realize that 100 Words or Less is still confusing for many of you because I was at a party this weekend, which is weird to say, but, just because I'm not really a party guy, and I was explaining this podcast to somebody, and they were older and they're not connected to our music scene at all. So I was telling them about 100 Words or Less, and they were like, "What does that have to do with music?" And I was like, "Well, nothing really." Just the fact that, in school, when you're older, or if you're older of a certain generation, you were often told in 100 words or less, summarize this book or this paragraph of thoughts or whatever. And that is lost. That no one under the age of I'm guessing like 35 would have any idea that was a thing that happened in high school. But anyways, for those of you that still are curious about the name, that's why it is what it is. And it's not related to music really, except the fact you can look at the logo and you'd be like, oh, there's records in there. So 100 words or less, got it. Anyways, that's a little etymology. Isn't that the dissection of words? So that's a little etymology lesson for the day. But you did not come for that. You came for the core, the punk, the independent music, the guests. And the guest this week is Singh. He is from HateFiveSix, and he is an incredible documentarian of our beautiful music scene because he films professionally. He films all of these band sets from festivals, from shows, multiple angles. Like you got it. If you can't see a band for whatever reason and you want to see them, you will be able to consume Sonny's videos. And, to be honest, this is a trend that has popped up, probably I would say in the, once handheld video cameras of a variety of quality started to happen in the, mid to late 2000s. It started to kind of boom all over the place. But I'll be honest, there's only two people in my mind that have done it very successfully. One of them is a close friend who, died tragically. Chris Avis and Sonny Singh. Those are basically the only videos that I watch from a professional perspective. So Sonny does great work, and people had requested for him to be on the show for quite some time, and finally we made it happen. I was like, after either another email or tweet or something where a person suggested Sonny, I was like, all right, let's do this. I gotta roll up my sleeves. I gotta figure this out. So, because it's not the interviewee's job to go like, hey, I want to appear on your show, which happens from time to time, but that's not Sonny's job. That's my job. So anyways, that's what we have. But you probably care about band merch, right? And you are probably aware or tangentially aware of rockabilia.com. If you are not familiar, you need to get familiar because they have over 500,000 different items on their web store. And they'll be having some Taken merch up there, not too long. But PC Jabberjaw is the code that will get you 15% off your first order. And they have so much great stuff. Like, you think of a hardcore band, you think of a metal band, you think of a pop act, they have it. And you'll be able to order it all from one convenient place, as opposed to like, all right, I'm going to go to this band camp and buy a shirt, and then I'm going to go to some other place and then, pay postage, 7 times. No, you don't need to do that. Rockabilia has great customer service. I've interacted with them. They're awesome. Fast shipping. They ship from the Midwest. And co-owner is a hardcore kid. Shout out to Frankie. So, yeah, there's really no other reasons besides all that laundry list of things that I gave you to support this business. So, yeah, PC Jabberjaw, 15% off. Please do that up, and it will support this show in turn. So we appreciate their partnership. And what else do I have that I want to tell you? I want to tell you I went to a show recently, which isn't like a momentous occasion in and of itself, but I went to a DIY space called Riff Mountain, which is located in the great city of Fullerton here in Southern California. I saw Tony Molina and Gem and some other great bands, and it was It was a great show. I had a fun time, even though the show, and granted, this is, advertised, so I wasn't like surprised that the show started at 11 p.m. But I was like, man, I'm an old dude. Like getting me out to a show at 11 p.m., like it's got to be really good. And it was really good. But it's just, now that I go to shows, I definitely am acutely aware of all of the things that I prefer what shows to be. And the fact that I'm like, okay, yeah, like I'm, one of the oldest people in the room. And that doesn't bother me. It's just an observation, so to speak. But the show is great. Super loose, super fun as far as the setup was concerned. And then, I actually got to meet a few people who were fans of the podcast, and they just like straight up came up to me and started talking to me about, hey, I really like the episode that you had with Christina from Gouge Away recently. I was like, oh, damn, you're on top of it. You just listened to this week's episode, like, a couple days after I released it. So I really appreciate all of you that recognize me, because I mean, technically people are recognizing me for something that is not rock based, but the podcast is a form of music in a way, I guess. But anyways, and I hope you like the term recognition, because I think it's really funny. I did not invent it, but I heard it somewhere and I thought it was really funny. So anyways, Sonny, great chat. And we go to a lot of places, and you'll hear at the very, very end of the conversation that he's like, yeah, I've never really got to share this stuff out in a, more formalized interview. So great stuff. Here is Sonny, and I will talk to you after the episode is over. Reaching in the back of my memory banks of when I first, tripped on HateFiveSix, and I want to say it was around like 2010 or so when our mutual friend who died tragically, Chris Avis, like once I mean I met him in like mid 2000s when he was recording the bands that I played in, and then I think either he may have said something about you or whatever. This whole online documenting like hardcore band world was just so vibrant and cool with what he was doing and what you were doing, which was, basically making sure these sets were preserved for time. And the hustle like was so apparent for what I saw you doing and then what I saw Chris doing as well. And it almost feels like when a person trips on, what you're doing, it's almost like discovering a new band where you're just like, oh my God, it's like a treasure trove. There's all these records I gotta like look at and videos I gotta look at. Do people kind of express that sentiment to you? Like when they discover you, like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know this thing existed. Now this is the best thing ever. Like what sort of feedback do you get from that perspective?
Yeah, no, I hear from all kinds of people. I hear from people who either used to be really into hardcore, like in the 80s or 90s and fell out of it. And then they stumble upon my site and they're just like, holy shit, there's all these new bands. And the site is what gets them to come out to shows again. So that's like a really cool thing. I also hear from people who, so in the last, obviously I have HateFiveSix.com, but in the last couple of years, I started mirroring all my content on YouTube, mostly to get so basically HateFiveSix is good for people who know, who already know about the site or know someone who knows about the site. But putting stuff on YouTube has allowed other people to just like trickle in and just like stumble upon stuff. So, Code Orange might play like a big metal fest and, the kid's going to go home and he'll go on YouTube, search for Code Orange. He'll find one of my Code Orange videos and then he or she will start like digging through the page and they'll be like, oh my God, like there's all these other bands. And so I do hear from both sides of that coin where it's new blood that, they may have stumbled upon something on YouTube and then they just start diving into just all these other, the whole ecosystem of bands. Or on the flip side, I hear from people who, know what hardcore is, but they've fallen off the map because of life, school, family, whatever. And they sort of rely on the site to, get a sense of all the new stuff that's going on. So it's really cool to hear. For me, when I started this, it was always just about, can a high quality video of bands be a medium to connect people to music? And it seems to be the case that that's true. So in that sense, I feel like I've achieved what my goal has been from the beginning.
Right. And it's cool too, because I think, similar to what you're saying, where there, especially, once festivals became this, flashpoint for hardcore in the mid 2000s, well, even earlier than that with Hellfest and everything, but at that time, the documentation of said things was so limited to just basically like, hey, we're going to put out a DVD once every couple of years, like Doug Spandenberg is going to put this together and we'll get something cool. But like now, you have these bands having these sets at fests that, just like completely blow people's minds. And then the people that can't attend watch it too. And it's like, it's captivating on like more than one level, and it gets spread like wildfire in places that just, you would never, like, a band is not cognizant of how much that set will be meaningful in the future, Right. It's just, it's great. It's just weird because normally, in the past it would be like, oh yeah, like, I remember, Touche Amore 2009 at, Sound and Fury. It was like that's when things kind of changed for them. And now people can be like, oh, I see why that was.
Yeah, it's actually right. It's you can actually point to it and actually dive into it and dissect it a little bit more. So it's I think it's an important archive, not just my project, but just like anyone who's filming shows. It's a chronicle of the evolution of a band and evolution of a scene. And I think that like, in terms of being able to look back and tell stories and like the sort of like the oral history of hardcore or punk, whatever it is, like it's good to have these sort of documents that you can reference to say, that Code Orange set from 2014 at This Is Hardcore was like the moment they blew up, or 2015, whenever it was. And so for me, I think it's important to be able to have those references because it just makes preserving the history much more, I feel like, true to the experience. Sure.
This is something I was going to ask a little bit later, but seems appropriate to bring up now where, when you are watching a band and you don't have a phone or a camera in front of you, there is that, visceral connection that people have, especially when you're talking about hardcore and you're watching like a special set or something. It's something that you feel the energy in the room. I presume because you are, very concerned about making sure that this is documented appropriately. Like, does it, does it kind of dull the experience initially, but then when you look back at the footage, is that kind of when it kicks back in again, or do you feel it kind of all around?
Are you asking, like, do I feel like the experience is dull while I'm filming it?
Yeah, just because you are so like technically, involved in making sure that this is appropriately documented.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny. I had a couple years ago, this must have been like 2010. I wanted to film the Evens in DC, so I hit up Ian MacKay, and I think I talked to him before the show, and he was like, "Oh, I'm cool with you filming," but then he started going on, and I love Ian, but he went on his sort of like philosophical approach where he's like, "Don't you think you're cheating yourself out of the experience by keeping your, having a lens that separates you from the moment?" And I thought about it and I said, no, like when I'm filming a band, I'm engaged with the set in a certain way. I might not be dancing and moshing and all that stuff, but I'm also, I am listening to the music and I'm not just standing there pointing the camera at the band. I'm looking for, things that are happening in the crowd. I'm looking for someone I'm trying to capture the moment, both with respect to the band, but also with the audience. So for me, when I'm filming, I feel like I'm engaged with the music and the performance in a very unique way, such that I'm responding to how the music makes me feel. So a lot of people complain that I have a very shaky camera style, which is fine, but I try to complement my camera movements. I try to complement with what the music's making me feel. So if I'm filming Vane and there's a very erratic part of the set where people are just like thrashing around, and I try to film that in a way that's reflective of how the music is making me feel. So when I'm seeing Vane, I'm getting hit from all sides, from people bumping into me. I'm dodging stage divers. I'm trying to capture the guitars thrashing around. I'm trying to capture the person in front of the stage, punching himself in the face. And so naturally the video is going to reflect that by being shaky. So I think that I don't find that filming dulls the experience for me. I think it heightens my awareness because I'm constantly looking for what is that moment at this specific time that's going to capture what this set represents. So I'm constantly looking for the small details and zooming in or zooming out or panning over to it. So for me, I definitely get a high from filming. But I mean, there are definitely cases and times when I'm like, fuck, I really wish I was just like in the crowd singing along and not stuck behind a camera. So it does happen. I'm not going to lie. That there are times when that happens.
Yeah. Oh, sure. But I mean, it especially too, I think with the the concerted effort that you have from, your honestly, your manifesto and what you are trying to accomplish with HateFiveSix is definitely like, oh, like this is, this is going to sound so like over dramatic, but like capturing this is this mission is greater than like my actual, fleeting enjoyment. Like I want more people to have enjoyment from this thing than like, my mosh pit experience or whatever.
Right. No, it does sound dramatic, but I think there is a little bit of truth to that. It's, I do it because I like it, but I also know that there are people out there who are going to find value in having these sets filmed. So for me, it's like, okay, I'll go shoot the show that I don't really care about, but I know that someone is going to watch it and enjoy it. And, for me, that sacrifice is worth it.
Yeah, totally. No, that's cool. I'll hit more on that in a bit, but the kind of focusing on you as a person. I know you were born and raised in New Jersey, which clearly is like half an hour outside of Philly, and that's what I mean. I presume most people are just like, oh yeah, you were like born and raised in Philly, and it's like, well, no, not actually. What was kind of the makeup of your household? Like mom and dad in there, brothers and sisters?
Yeah, so I had I have an older brother and older sister, so I'm the baby. And my parents grew up with both my parents. So my parents came to America from India in like the mid to late 70s, and they settled in New Jersey, and they had my brother in like 79 and then my sister in 81. And then I came along in 86. So basically born and raised, grew up in New Jersey. We moved like maybe twice, but I've always been in South Jersey. And it's interesting. People are like, what does HateFiveSix mean? Like, why do you hate the number 5 and 6? It's 5 and 6. It's like, no, well, my when I was growing up, my area code in South Jersey was 609. And I remember in high school, they changed it to 856. And I was like, fuck this. Like, they're taking away my area code. This is my whole identity. So HateFiveSix is basically a play on the area code where I grew up, which is 856.
Right, exactly. You were told by the government that this needs to change, and it's just like, but I don't want that.
Yeah, but no, I know I had a very good life growing up. My parents took care of us, and they had a strong emphasis on education and succeeding in the things that we want to do. Not super strict. I never really got punished. I mean, I was definitely a troublemaker, which I think does show itself in certain ways. Now that I run HateFiveSix as a very public figure, the way I deal with certain people, I tend to troll them, and I think that comes from how I grew up as just like a prankster. But my parents were always very encouraging. They encouraged me they never got mad about me like taking apart old computers and breaking things and trying to rebuild it. So, and I was telling my dad recently, I told him that two of the most definitive moments of my life were one, when he bought us our first computer back in like 94, 95. The other moment was when he bought me a book on HTML and how to write code for like websites. So a lot of those experiences that I had growing up were really formative to me. And I think that looking back now as like a 32-year-old, I really appreciate a lot of those at the time seemingly small gestures, but they really helped mold me. And like my brother got me into metal back in like late 90s. He was a big Rage Against the Machine fan in like the mid 90s. And so that's how I, fell into that fucking mess and still haven't escaped from it. So a lot of my, I would say, yeah, it's funny. Looking back, I feel like I haven't changed much. I feel like I sort of found who I was and who I wanted to be pretty early on in life. And I've only just refined that over the years. I haven't really deviated too much.
No, that's cool. I mean, I think a lot of people that do, have the fortune of kind of, tripping across, whether it's like, oh, this is something I'm really passionate about, like you said, technology and computers and stuff like that. And then finding a community in music and like putting all those together, that because both of those things, are usually indicated for older people, whether it's like technology, like, oh yeah, you can know how to use computers and stuff, but like most people aren't taking apart their calculators and their computers at an early age. And then same thing, like going to shows, you're going to shows with older people mostly, or you're surrounded by older people. And so like most high schoolers don't have that experience of being surrounded by older people.
iHeartRadio and Grim and Mild present Bridgewater Season 2.
A lot of people now actually believe that there is some kind of mystical force in this region that attracts monsters and paranormal activity.
The Bridgewater Triangle. Now, that sounds about right.
You're still denying that there's something beyond our understanding going on here?
Starring Supernatural's Misha Collins, The Walking Dead's Melissa Ponzio, and Rogue One's Alan Tudyk. Written by Lauren Shippen and created by me, Aaron Mahnke.
Something about all of this doesn't feel right.
Hello? Is someone there?
Something went wrong here.
Olivia, we should hurry.
We have a much bigger problem.
What is that?
Olivia, run!
Listen to Bridgewater now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And learn more over at grimandmild.com/Bridgewater.
What's up? It's Angela Yee, and I want to tell you about my podcast, Lip Service. I created Lip Service as a safe space for women to talk about whatever they want to when it comes to the bedroom with no judgment. Lip Service means fun conversations and the freedom to talk about whatever you want. Lip Service is the one place where you can hear artists talk about the intimate details of their life and subjects that you might not hear anywhere else. It's where Nick Cannon felt safe enough to open up about some controversial topics with his love life.
The stork is on the way. You know, there's a lot of kids last year.
Oh my God. Also, Lizzo sat down and discussed dating. This was before she was in a relationship.
Oh, we never spoke after that, though.
We want to know why.
Okay, listen.
And even Cardi B came on recently, where she had a great time talking about life before her marriage to Offset.
I thought you wanted a bad and bougie. You got a bad and ghetto.
Make sure you check out my podcast, Lip Service, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Do you crave a good mystery? Tune in to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio podcast, featuring episodes of different detective dramas from the golden age of radio every day, Monday through Saturday. The lineup of radio detectives currently includes Sam Spade, Dr. Tim Detective, Dangerous Assignment, Philo Vance, yours truly Johnny Dollar, and Tales of the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Adam Graham, and I offer commentary and humor after each episode, and also respond to your questions and feedback. Enjoy a good mystery before bed, while driving, or whenever you crave old-school radio goodness. Listen to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast.
Right.
Hey, this past month, you've probably heard a ton about privacy policies. Have you ever heard about a company being proud of their privacy policy? WeTransfer absolutely is. They're all about making file sharing easier for everyone. And that includes being sure you don't need to worry about your privacy. So they don't sell user data, they don't snoop or spy on files, and they don't want to know your shoe size, soft drink preference, or shopping history. WeTransfer serves ads to keep their services free, but never in that creepy, I was just talking about that thing, and then all of a sudden it shows up on the internet, and that's terrible. In fact, they reserve 30% of their ad space to showcase the work of artists from around the world. It's their way of making the internet a nicer, simpler, more beautiful place. Start sending files and see what they stand for at we.tl/notcreepy. So we.tl/notcreepy, all one word. Not creepy, for those of you that need a little help spelling, NOTCREEPY. So we.tl/notcreepy. You make WeTransfer. This place is incredible, okay? WeTransfer. Send all their files that way, all right? Now, the rest of the show.
This is going to be, grossly stereotyping things, but clearly there's always the joke of, Indian people having, tech support and all of that. Did your family exist in the technology industry at all? Or is that something that just was kind of, part and parcel of your father seeing that you're interested in that?
Yeah, no. So my dad is civil engineer. Okay. And then he also does real estate stuff. So, he's not very tech savvy. I'm always helping him with stuff, but he cultivated my love for math and was always helping me out with calculus in high school and stuff like that. And my mom was stay at home, but she also helped. she helped run the family real estate property management stuff. My mom is also, she went to school for fine art. So that's not something she's been doing much in recent years, that's something she sort of like gave up for a while. But in recent years, I bought her like a tablet. So now she's like drawing stuff on on her small tablet thing. And she's like falling in love again with creating art. And I think that, to some degree, I feel like a lot of my creative, drive probably comes from her deep down.
That's cool that you can recognize that and see how that, that influence can play on yourself. And then I like the idea that, passions, like once a person has cultivated in some capacity and they leave it, it doesn't mean that they can't come back to it, because it's like, it's almost like riding a bike. If like you didn't film for 10 years, granted technology changes pretty quickly. So you'd have to, adapt to the new cameras in 10 years or whatever. But, you'd be able to like dive back in and be like, oh, okay, I see how this goes.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, your gateway band was, Rage Against the Machine. And I like, in other interviews you've done where you make the lineage of, Rage into finding out like, oh, Zach had another band before Rage called Inside Out. Like, I love that, like that experience of when you get obsessed with a band, how you have to find every piece of information you can about every member and like what they've done previously and where they come from. And then once you do find out, they're like, oh, there's other music. And then it just cracks your head open. And I'm sure that was your experience with Inside Out.
Yeah, it was like I found Inside Out. And I was like, whoa, what is this? And then I remember I was really late in the 90s. I was really also into the early 2000s. I was into collecting VHS tapes of bands. So obviously this is before internet video. So I remember I got a VHS tape with it was a 93 Inside Out reunion, and there was like a Gorilla Biscuit set on there and Youth of Today. And I was like, whoa, what is this shit? I had no idea. Like this is what this stuff was. And then also, from tracing Inside Out, I came across 108 and stuff like that. So that was like, a lot of people come into hardcore from like punk. And like, when I was in high school, a lot of my friends were starting punk bands. So I had some sort of familiarity with that, but it was through Rage that I found Inside Out and 108. And then again, like finding Gorilla Biscuits on that tape, that I was just like, whoa, this is for me. This stuff is what I'm all about. Mm-hmm. And I think and my brother took me to Ozfest 2001, and Hatebreed played on the side stage. And so that was like the first. I mean, I had gone to like a couple punk shows here and there, but like that was the first like real big hardcore band that I saw, and I was like, that blew my mind.
Right.
And then I was like a big fan.
I find it interesting like getting into 108 and Inside Out, like those are both very spiritually connected bands. Whether or not, I mean, Inside Out was speaking more so from the the soul searching aspect of it. 108 was too, and that's kind of hard initially as a kid to kind of wrap your head around, especially when you're, trying to crack open Krishna consciousness and everything like that. What kind of, were you attracted to those messages and like that kind of soul searching ecosystem of both of those bands?
Yeah. So in general, I tend to be really attracted to just introspective lyrics. So like Damnation, Unbroken, those are bands that are very self-reflective. And I felt like Inside Out was very similar. I mean, there's only so much I can take about breaking chains and getting stabbed in the back.
Yep.
And there's certain themes that reoccur in hardcore. But I just felt like something about Inside Out just clicked with me in terms of, not just the lyrics, but also how they were being delivered. And there just seemed like a very sincere emotion behind it. And I think that's what was really appealed to me. And then, with 108, it's interesting. Like, so my parents are Hindu, but I'm not a religious person. So I've always been sort of conflicted with that because the Indian culture is very sort of tied to Hinduism. So I felt like, growing up, I was pushing away the religion. And as a result, I was pushing away the sort of my cultural and like ancestry that was tied to it. So I definitely went through a phase where I was dealing with like an identity crisis, and I still struggle with it. There are times where I'm just like, oh, I'm not I'm too American to be Indian, but I'm also not Indian enough to be Indian. Like I feel like I exist in two worlds at all times. And it's a very difficult thing to navigate at times. But it's funny, like when I found 108, I was like, oh, this like makes sense because they're lyrically they're talking about things that are at least somewhat related to my ancestry. You know, even though I'm not a devotee, but like some of the like the themes and the messages are deeply rooted in Hinduism and Indian culture. And, you know, they were coming at it from a hardcore perspective, which is what I was already in love with. So they were providing me a way to interact with a part of myself that I was not up until then able to sort of confront or face. And what's funny, it's like they're all like white people. They're not Indian people, you know, and that's no knock on them. I love 108 and I love everyone in the band, but it's like, damn, it took like some white people who became Christian devotees for me to feel comfortable with being Indian. Yeah, so that's sort of why I was really drawn to it. It was, you know, one, I fucking love the music, but two, it's, even though I'm not a devotee, they help sort of answer some very deep questions that I had about myself and my identity.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you laying that out, because I think that's like when you start to, you know, butt up against tradition, religion, and you have to start, you know, figuring out what it is that you actually believe. And, you know, when you're viewing it through the prism of, you know, your, like you were saying, your culture, the way you were raised and how every member of your family is. And then you're like, well, I don't know if I feel that. And then you have, you know, a band or, you know, someone else that you trust kind of painting a picture for you. It's kind of like, oh yeah, like that's what I feel more than just like having to do this because my family tells me to do it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. You also, I'm just kind of making a sweeping assumption of you, but like you, the way that you've always struck me, just, you know, kind of observing you as a person and the way that you are, you know, that you exist on the internet is, that you seem like an outgoing guy. Like you definitely aren't a wallflower from that perspective. And then, you know, you kind of indicating earlier that you were a prankster and you like to, you know, cause mischief. How did that manifest itself? Like, you know, were you, you know, like doing, you know, putting cherry bombs in mailboxes and stuff like that? Or what were you into?
Well, it's funny. I actually feel like I'm pretty introverted. I mean, I have a very, very big online presence. And if I'm at like a big show, like I'll talk to people, but I tend to just like keep to so if I'm not, I spend a lot of time by myself, you know, editing videos or, I tend to be a very private person in certain ways. And maybe I'm just getting burned out on a lot of social interaction. And this is just my time, you know, you need time by yourself to just like recharge. But I feel like, in certain ways I'm very outgoing, and in other ways I'm very like private. And, you know, I tend to prefer doing things by myself. And I don't know if that's a product of just getting burned out on, having this big like public presence, or if that's just like naturally who I am. But like as a kid, you know, I was, I'm trying to think of like funny pranks. I mean, I was always doing like prank calls and like, what was it called? Like a Ding Dong Ditch. I think regionally it's a different name. I don't know what places what people call it.
Yeah, Ding Dong Ditch is I think that's the most universally accepted term.
So doing something like that, you know, we would when the ice cream truck would come by in the neighborhood, you know, they would sell those little, they're not explosives. They're like little silver packets full of like baking soda and vinegar that if you pop them, they'll expand and like blow up. You know what I'm talking about?
Totally.
So we would buy them from the ice cream truck, and then like he would hand it to us, and we would detonate them and like throw them back into the truck and then run away.
Dude, that's incredible. I like that. I've never.
Yeah, so we would do terrible things like that. And so, I mean, and so as I became more tech savvy, my pranks became more involved. Like I remember being in college, and then there was my friend of mine who lived a fairly sheltered life growing up. She had never heard of Jay Leno or CNN or any sort of cultural reference. She had no bearing. Like you could not come up with any sort of cultural point that she could actually refer to and understand. And I think it's because she grew up in a house where they didn't have like cable TV. and things like that. So I remember I made a spoof website that looked like CNN, and I posted a ridiculous article. And I remember she came to me, and so she was like, so let me back up. So at my college, there was basically a fundraiser. So this is during like the Darfur genocide. So there was a fundraiser on campus where people they set up an event called Hookah for Darfur. So basically people would come and smoke a hookah, and the money was being raised to somehow end the genocide in Darfur, or, be donated to some like humanitarian aid there. And I was just like, man, this is just so silly. There was something about the idea of just like sitting around and smoking a hookah.
That being helpful, right?
Like, yeah. And in retrospect, like, they raise money and like there's value in that. But I was just like, man, like you couldn't do anything else. And I was just so upset about it. I was like, this is so fucking ridiculous. So I made a fake CNN website, and the headline was college students end the genocide by smoking a hookah. And this is like pre-Onion, anything like that. And I showed it to my friend who, like I said, who had no understanding of anything. And she was like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And she's like, they solved it. Like, and I was like,
it's over
on CNN. And then she was like, but wait, what's CNN, and why did they let you write an article for them? And I'm like, oh my God, this is
dude, that's an involved, like, I apologize for me not knowing this. Like, are you straight edge?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. And like, were you straight edge at the time? With that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can the only reason I asked that is because I put myself in your shoes, and I definitely would have done the same thing of just like, dude, what is this hookah madness? Like, there's no way that's like actually, causing a benefit or whatever. But that, anyways.
Yeah. And I was definitely like a militant asshole about being vegan, being straight edge back then. So I was constantly antagonizing people, and I'm definitely not that person anymore, but
right.
I would, we had online message boards at the college, and I would just troll the fuck out of people on there, like smoking or whatever it was. And like, people did not like me for it.
Sure.
And I think like I'm still pranking people today. Like, so, for This Is Hardcore, we haven't done it in a while, but we would make a lot of like, promotional movies that were just a bunch of just like jokes. And, we had one movie a couple years ago, these movies were basically, we would write a script, and they would have some sort of like plot. And then they would also have hints to the lineup. And at the end, so basically if you watched it, and if you were astute enough, you would pick up on the hints of what the lineup would be. So I remember a couple years ago, we premiered one of our films, and we promised people, we're like, oh, it's going to be a black tie event. So you have to dress up in a suit and tie or a fancy dress. There's going to be admission. We're going to donate the money. And at the end, we're going to reveal the lineup. So people came out, like we rented this, like, this upstairs space at this church that had really nice seating and really nice, just like tapestries and things like that. And we played the movie on like a big screen, and people were like, decked out in their finest attire. And so at the end, people were like, so the movie ends. And typically what I like to do at the end of these movies is I show something on the screen that's about to reveal the lineup. And then I cut to a clip of Admiral Akbar from Star Wars, and he just says, it's a trap. And the thing is, like, people caught onto it, but they would still fucking fall for it. So people came out to this thing thinking they were going to see the lineup. And at the end, I pull my fucking Akbar shit, and people are like, wait, we're not getting the lineup? And we're like, nope, we're not telling you what the lineup is. You got to wait another week. So I'm surprised. Yeah. And I'm surprised I never got beat up for that one, but
yeah. That's the kind of but I really like that balance of you're talking about, where it's just like the introverted nature of the work that you get involved in, that, and that, that goes across many different disciplines, whether it's, this medium in and of itself, podcasting, like, yes, we are talking and we are connecting as human beings, but like, I'm going to go back and edit this and do this myself in a room by myself. And you're going to edit videos by yourself in a room. And most of the work that people do from that perspective is solitary, but then you want to, you express yourself in these other ways that are very extroverted. And like you said, just, trolling and just causing, mischief and mayhem and blowing people's minds and bumming people out. Because that is an expression of, a extrovert of like, oh yeah, this feels fun and good.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sort of, as of recently, trying to use trolling as a way to I don't know, in a more positive way. So like, recently I've been getting a lot of hate messages, from people who don't like the HateFiveSix logo, or they don't like, that I don't hide who I am. I don't hide my politics. I don't hide my face. Like, so there are a lot of people who feel threatened by my presence. And like a couple weeks ago, I posted this, speech that Pulling Teeth gave at This Is Hardcore, where Mike Riley from Pulling Teeth, he gave a speech about how trans people are not a burden, and gave a speech about how Black and brown people belong here, and that anyone who questions that should be challenged, and with force, not physical force, but like with people should be aggressively confronting people who are saying transphobic or racist things. So I posted that video and it went viral, and I was getting a lot of people like on my personal pages just saying like, go back to India, or just saying really hateful things, and doubling down on transphobic comments. And so I use trolling as a way to expose them, and also just to rile them up. So what I typically do, if someone is just spewing hate either towards me or towards a band, typically people who if I film a band that has a woman or a trans person or a person of color, those videos tend to get a lot of negative responses from maybe not people in hardcore, but people who stumble upon the video are more inclined to leave negative comments on that. So typically what I do is I just ask them, hey, are you all right? Like, what's going on? And it's sort of like a de-escalation technique, because a troll is expecting you to just fight fire with fire. So these people are leaving negative comments because they're expecting you to be like, well, fuck you, man. Like, why are you hating on this? This is my friend. Like, fuck you. Like, I want to see what band that you're in. But what I try to do is I just be like, Jesus, you're really upset. Like, are you okay? And they're taken aback by that, because they're not expecting that response. And what they end up doing is they're just like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm just this person shouldn't be in a band because they fucking suck. And I basically keep de-escalating the situation and allow them to just get more and more riled up about it. And they don't realize that I'm making fun of them.
Right.
And then other people like chime in, and they're just like, they start making fun of them too in the same way. And it just really just makes a mockery of what they're trying to say. And so I'm using that. And again, like someone asked me, like, how do you do it? Like, I would be so upset just seeing all those comments. And like, I told them, it's like, I emotionally detach from what these people are saying. Cause at the end of the day, it's like what they're saying, like they have a right to say everyone has a right to their opinion. But I'm not going to let certain things go unchallenged, basically. And so what happened with that Pulling Teeth video was a lot of like these Trump supporters were resharing the video and adding their own, commentary on it, saying like, oh, fuck this speech and fuck this dude. Like, this PC social justice warrior culture has to stop. But what they fail to realize is like, that's cool. That's your opinion. That's cool. Like, I don't fucking care for your opinion, but what you're at the end of the day is you're sharing that video, which is spreading this speech, which is spreading this message that needs to be heard. So the way I look at it is like, these people are only doing my bidding. They're spreading this message that I think needs to be put out there. So at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to get mad. There's only so much getting mad about these people is going to do. And so I'm trying to think about it from the positive perspective, which is they're sharing these videos on their platforms, which is reaching the people who need to hear this message. Because in hardcore and punk, a lot of it is just preaching to the choir. Mm-hmm. And I think that these messages need to reach the people who are not within these four walls.
Totally. Well, and just the notion that it's like, hey, this broken up hardcore band that, relatively speaking was pretty small, like is now being shared amongst people who have like never heard hardcore, like have no experience with the independent music scene, and are just like, what is this stupid band saying? It's so great. Yeah. I agree with you.
And it might not change every opinion, but if it can change one person, then that's enough. Because that one person can then pay it forward. So whenever anyone's like, oh, you're a failed experiment, or anyone's like, oh, Rage Against the Machine was a failed experiment, it's like, no, like, look at me. I've taken what I took from that band, and I've paid it forward. And I think that like trying to quantify success in terms of large scale change isn't always the right way. I think, if collectively, if we make small incremental changes, that can add up to a much bigger movement. So that's sort of what I keep in mind. It's like, I'm not gonna end world hunger today. I'm not gonna end the Trump administration. But if I can put something out there that's going to change one person's mind, then that's a success.
Exactly. It's just collecting one by one. That's all anything that is ever worth
socially, culturally speaking, is, you're collecting one person at a time, and that you never know how that's going to influence, like you said, others. And so, yeah, I agree with your mission, my friend. Did you ever play in a band?
I did not. I mean, I played in middle school. I played the saxophone. So I played in like the marching band, but I wasn't that good at it. So I did that for like 2 or 3 years, and then I stopped. I tried picking up a guitar. I learned a couple chords, but I was just like, I don't have time to do this. I would really like to learn how to play it one day, but I just don't have the time right now. I've done like guest vocals at certain during certain live sets, but I've never like sung for a band. But it's funny, people are always like, yo, you need to front a band. Like, I've seen you do that Inside Out cover song, and like you have the presence to do it. But I'm like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, that'd be really cool. But I'm also just like, I don't know how to write lyrics. Like, I don't know how to do it. Yeah. I really don't. I don't know how certain people do it. And I'm trying to picture like, wow, could I write a song like that's lyrically as forceful as some of my favorite songs? And I just have a hard time picturing myself doing that.
Well, Sonny, just to relieve the pressure from you, my friend, you don't have to, you don't have to write "No Spiritual Surrender" as your first song. Like even though they accidentally did that, you don't have to put that pressure on yourself.
Right. That's true.
iHeartRadio and Grim and Mild present Bridgewater Season 2.
A lot of people now actually believe that there is some kind of mystical force in this region that attracts monsters and paranormal activity.
The Bridgewater Triangle. Now that sounds about right.
You're still denying that there's something beyond our understanding going on here?
Starring Supernatural's Misha Collins, The Walking Dead's Melissa Ponzio, and Rogue One's Alan Tudyk. Written by Lauren Shippen and created by me, Aaron Mahnke.
Something about all of this doesn't feel right.
Hello? Is someone there?
Something went wrong here.
Olivia, we should hurry.
We have a much bigger problem.
What is that?
Olivia, run!
Listen to Bridgewater now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And learn more over at grimandmild.com/Bridgewater.
What's up? It's Angela Yee, and I want to tell you about my podcast, Lip Service. I created Lip Service as a safe space for women to talk about whatever they want to when it comes to the bedroom with no judgment. Lip Service means fun conversations and the freedom to talk about whatever you want. Lip Service is the one place where you can hear artists talk about the intimate details of their life and subjects that you might not hear anywhere else. It's where Nick Cannon felt safe enough to open up about some controversial topics with his love life.
The stork is on the way. You know, there's a lot of kids last year.
Oh my God. Also, Lizzo sat down and discussed dating. This was before she was in a relationship.
Oh, we never spoke after that, though.
We want to know why.
Okay, listen.
And even Cardi B came on recently, where she had a great time talking about life before her marriage to Offset.
I thought you wanted a bad and bougie. You got a bad and got a...
Make sure you check out my podcast, Lip Service, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Do you crave a good mystery? Tune in to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio podcast, featuring episodes of different detective dramas from the golden age of radio every day, Monday through Saturday. The lineup of radio detectives currently includes Sam Spade, Dr. Tim Detective, Dangerous Assignment, Philo Vance, yours truly Johnny Dollar, and Tales of the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Adam Graham, and I offer commentary and humor after each episode, and also respond to your questions and feedback. Enjoy a good mystery before bed, while driving, or whenever you crave old school radio goodness. Listen to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast.
Hey, pardon the interruption, but I have an important announcement for you. We got a rad new sponsor, Nutrafol. What is it? It is a new, safe, and effective strategy to help you take control of your hair health. It's made with 100% drug-free nutraceutical ingredient that are clinically shown to improve thinning hair. It's recommended by over 850 top physicians and some of the top salons in the country. So it's not just genetics that have it out for your hair. Stress, DHT levels, diet, environment, toxins, all of that has been discovered to compromise your hair health. Whatever the cause is, you're catching your reflection in the mirror and you're like, oh, I don't know, it's thinning a little bit up there. Real talk, I've seen that myself and my stepfather, a lot of men in the family. Maybe you've tried the drugs in the market. Maybe you're interested in something that's not 100% drug-free. Leveraging the latest, greatest in biotechnology, Nutrafol's botanical ingredients are shown to improve hair without compromising sexual health or any other kind. In fact, one of Nutrafol's key ingredients, saw palmetto, you've probably heard of that before. It's been shown to support a healthier libido. So my stepfather has been using Nutrafol for quite some time, and I was excited when they came to me to want to sponsor the show because he loves this stuff. It's a great way. He is basically just contributing to his hair health, and that is an awesome thing. He loves it, takes it. He's been doing it for, I want to say, about 4 or 5 months now. It's awesome. So to get your first month supply with a subscription for over $10, for $10 exactly, visit Nutrafol.com, and you spell that Nutrafol.com, and use the promo code WORDS during checkout. That's Nutrafol.com, Nutrafol.com. Offer code WORDS to get your first month supply for $10 with a subscription. Do it up. You got nothing to lose. Make your hair healthy. Nutrafol. Now on with the show.
I guess what was the path as you were, going through school and, like from a career perspective, like, because you weren't bitten by the bug of like, oh, I'm going to drop out of school and like tour and all that sort of stuff. How did that kind of manifest itself? What did you have a vision for?
What with how I started HateFiveSix or what?
Or like how basically you're like, what am I going to do after I graduate high school? Am I going to go to college? What am I going to work career stuff? Like, what are you going to do?
Right. Well, yeah. So like I said, my parents cultivated the sort of importance on education. So I knew without hesitation that I would go to college. So that was like without a question. I was definitely interested in like science and things like that. So I knew I was leaning towards something in that direction. But when I got to college, I really fell in love with abstract math and computer science. So I knew pretty early on, once coming to college, what I wanted to do professionally. And so in the back of my head, I was always like, okay, I'll either go to grad school for like a PhD in math, or I'll be like a software developer or something like that. So that's pretty much the path that I took. I ended up getting rejected from every PhD program I applied to. So I worked for a little bit as a software developer. Then I went to grad school. I quit that, went to grad school for computer science, and sort of figured out even more specifically what area of computer science that I really liked. So after grad school, which I graduated in 2011, I had a much better sense of what area I wanted to go into. And so like 2000, I officially launched HateFiveSix in 2008. It was right after I finished college, and I was basically trying to find my first job. And so while I was like sending resumes out and interviewing, I was like, let me just build a website. I had my stuff posted on YouTube, but I was like, let me just build like a central, location and database that people can come to. So that was like, it started out as a project just for me to keep myself busy, and then also to use as like, when I need to refer to something on my resume that, here's something that I built, I can point to it. So, ever since that point, HateFiveSix has always been, just something that I've done on the side, just like a work in progress. I've built new tools for it. I've done a lot. I mean, there's like thousands of lines of code that go behind the scenes that run the site. And so, whenever I'm interviewing for a job, I can refer to it, be like, oh, I built this, adaptive scheduling system that re-ranks what videos get released every day based off of what the public demand is. So, a lot of what HateFiveSix has been just like a playground for me to, either learn a new piece of technology or, learn a new software language or what have you. And those are skills that I then incorporate into my 9-to-5. And so after, grad school, I worked in tech for a couple of years, and HateFiveSix was always this thing on the side. And very recently, it just got to the point where it's like, I really think I want to try doing HateFiveSix full time. Because juggling, and people don't realize that a lot of people think that HateFiveSix is my full-time job. And I think it's because I've found a way to juggle, a 9-to-5 and also, be able to produce as much content as I do. So it got to the point recently where it's just like, I can keep doing it, but I'm just not going to be happy. And I think what I need to do for my happiness and to try to push what I've done to the next level is to take the plunge and try doing it full time. So for me, again, I feel like one of the themes of my life is straddling multiple worlds, whether it's like, oh, am I Indian enough or am I American enough? And it's also been like, wow, I like doing video, but I also like doing tech. And I'm sort of living this double life where I'm at my 9-to-5 job. I don't talk about what I do with HateFiveSix. And then when I'm doing HateFiveSix, I don't really talk about, the stuff I do from 9 to 5, but maybe it makes sense maybe it makes the most sense for me to combine these things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think too, like the experience of people that do stuff that is of a, larger public context outside of whatever work they're doing from, like you said, a 9 to 5 perspective. Like, most people don't do that. Most people like work and then they're like, they have their hobbies and like, that's cool. And they spend time, golfing, dancing, whatever it is, that normal people do. But like people are so taken aback when it's like, people like, yourself or myself that like have all of these other things going on and they're just like, what? It's like that act in and of itself is really influential to a lot of people who are just kind of like, oh, like, that don't have the luxury of being exposed to this, this awesome music scene that we've tripped across.
Right.
So yeah, basically just do your stuff more, Sonny. Okay.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like I've been hearing from a lot of people saying like, well, the fact that you're able to juggle this stuff inspires me to follow my own passion. So I that's a cool thing to hear from people, that they're seeing that I am trying to make this work for myself. And that's inspiring them to explore whether they can break from this monotony of, you have to work a 9 to 5 and then you can only spend a couple hours a night on your hobbies. It's like, no, there is a life outside of that. And if I can sort of provide an example for people to push themselves and do what they love, then again, that's another win for me. That's another win for like doing what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a few other things before I let you go was the, I know you've been public in the fact that certain bands, what are Painted Black and other bands have been like, no, like, don't film me. I'm, have philosophical opposition to it. And like, I try to I always try to understand where people are coming from. Like if, something that doesn't make sense in my head, I'm always just like, why? I don't really get why a person like, thinks this way or whatever. Does that still kind of like confound you when bands like, you'll respect them and you won't do it eventually. But like, does that idea still kind of sit weird in your head of like, why would a band like ultimately not want to be filmed?
Yeah, no, I've mellowed out about it. I'm at a point now where it's like, well, if a band really doesn't want me to film, I'd rather spend that time filming a band that would appreciate it. But so for a while, I was just like, well, what the fuck? Like, no one owns these moments, and I should be able to document my experience, and I should be free to share that. But I now that sort of HateFiveSix is growing, I understand, if a band plays a terrible set, they'll sometimes be like, hey, can you not post that? And part of me is like, well, fuck, like, I'm not here to curate your image. I'm not trying to only post your good sets. I think it's important to show like, sometimes bands play a terrible set, but that's only motivation to play a better set the next time. And also, again, creates a context so when they do play a better set, it actually resonates more, I feel like. I mean, I talked to like Rich from Killing Time, and he was like, someone asked him, he's like, yo, don't you get upset when Sonny posts like a mediocre Killing Time set? He's like, no, like this is punk rock. Like we're supposed to, it's not meant to be cookie cutter and perfect and, whitewashed of imperfections. Like it's meant to be dirty and like fucked up, and he was also like, it just makes it better when we do play a good set, because it makes that better set stand out a lot more. So I appreciate that perspective because it resonates more with how I like to think about documenting this music. But at the same time, I get it. A band doesn't want a certain video up. And at this point, like I have plenty of things to work on that I'm not going to freak out about it. But early on, I was just like, what the fuck? Like I filmed this thing. I want to post it. But I think that in recent years, I'm just like, whatever. It's really up to the artist at this point.
Sure. But you're like, yeah, but I still don't understand why you don't want that, but I'll respect it.
Yeah.
something that I was kind of talking about a little bit earlier, but the idea that communities, in the same way that, like you were mentioning earlier, the sort of VHS tape trading that existed, where, people would compile these tapes of like, oh, here's all these great sets that, you'll never get to see. But then a community, has kind of sprung up around the idea of, of not only HateFiveSix, but the documentation of these sets and everything like that. But to me, the sort of distinct step that you took forward is like actually branding it, like coming up with a logo and like having this sort of your personality broadcast to the world. Was that, I'm sure when you were doing it initially, like you said, it was, you have tempered expectations. You're not like, all right, well, I'm going to take over the world by doing this. But, how have you navigated kind of that, that public persona? Well, not like you're a different person in public, but putting yourself out there to where people can, criticize and be dicks when, that kind of hurts, because at the end of the day, all you're doing is, filming bands and you're trying to contribute something positive. So how have you navigated that?
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of content creators are stuck behind the lens, and it's easy to not realize that there's a person behind it. So like when Chris passed away, I was like, I was upset for a lot of reasons. And part of me was just like, I really hope people realize that there was a person behind that camera. And it's not just someone who was posting YouTube videos of Sound and Fury and all these amazing shows in California, but like there was a person there who sacrificed so much to give people what he gave. And so I think that like my decision to brand HateFiveSix was to just like put my little, my little flag in the ground and say like, this is who I am. I'm a person behind this. I'm not just a, anonymous videographer. Like, this is who I am. And like, there is a person behind this. And the other motivation was like, there's not many people who look like me in hardcore and punk. And so for me, it was maybe it's like an egotistical thing, but it's also just like, I'm a brown person and I'm contributing something to hardcore. And I want you to know that, this is who I am, and I'm not going to hide it. And so for me, it was wanting to reaffirm my own visibility within this community. And sort of to tell myself like, yes, I am in the minority, but I don't have to be confined to that sort of title. I can actually be a presence that provides something that people find useful. And that's sort of putting my little flag in the ground and saying like, this is who I am. This is my identity. And you have to, if my presence is a threat to you, then you got to fucking deal with it. I'm not going to budge, and it's like, I've been hearing from people more and more saying like, hey, I'm like a brown guy in my own home scene, and there's no one else who looks like me. But when I see, your presence behind HateFiveSix, it makes me feel more comfortable to come out to shows. So for me, that's the best thing that I could possibly hear from someone, that my sort of decision to be fearless with putting myself out there is making other people feel more comfortable being who they are in their own communities. Sure. No, I really like that. Well, it's not a notion. I really like that idea, just because it's, you are, representing not only yourself, but, the majority of the minority that is, the hardcore scene, which is just a microcosm of, different cities and, the nation as a whole. And so it's always good to, clearly have different voices that will be able to share the ways that people can contribute, because I think so many people, when they start to experience, punk and hardcore, and then like want to get involved, but like, don't play guitar or whatever, like a lot of people are just, I don't know, like, I mean, I guess I'll try to take pictures or whatever. And so like, when you have all these options out there, it not only is it powerful for the community as a whole, but then, more specifically people that aren't, straight white dudes that are going to shows, Right. Yeah, it's really cool that it's just cool that you've had that positive feedback too, because sometimes, you don't hear that from people. Yeah. I mean, again, that's not something I expected, but, again, it's, even though I am exposing myself to a lot of hate from people, I think that is, it's worth it. And if I know that it's making people feel like they have a presence, they have like a space, and they have a presence in their own scene. And I think that like me taking a couple, negative messages from people here and there is it's worth it.
Yeah, totally. You could just troll them. You know how to handle it now.
Yeah, I'm a master troll. I know how to deal with it.
Totally. You're just like, hey, calm down. I really like the are you okay? Like, people are just what's this? Like, you're not supposed to show me compassion. And it's like, yeah, the moment you show that to a person, they immediately are just like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have been a dick. Like, whether they express that publicly or not, it's always in someone's head when that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
It's something that I've always kind of grappled with in regards to the differences between, the East Coast and the West Coast. And I'm not asking you to speak representatively of the entire, Philadelphia hardcore scene, but there is a notion that, Philadelphia is, pretty violent. And I remember when Taken was on tour with This Day Forward, we played the Rotunda, and it was like one of the first times where I've been on the side of the pit and been punched in the face, by someone just moshing. But I was like, oh, the West Coast has violent dancing, I guess, but it just wasn't to the same level. And it was the first time where I kind of noticed that difference. And, since you've traveled around and you've witnessed a bunch of different hardcore scenes, how does that kind of compare and contrast, for you as you see different scenes exist? And, maybe you feel like Philly's got a bad rap. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think maybe I'm slightly a nerd to it, but Philly is, there are aggressive people here who mosh. I don't think it's as violent as it used to be. There are people, there are hard moshers, but I don't think that they are significantly harder than other scenes that I've seen. And that's not a diss on Philly, being like, oh, you're not hard enough. But it's like, I don't think people here are actively targeting people in a way that other people envision that they are. I think that probably before I was really coming to shows, it was much more of that, especially when, certain people or certain groups were still around. I think there was definitely a different attitude. But I don't know, as I travel, I feel like I'm not seeing much variation in terms of mosh style or things like that. Maybe that's because, people have said that HateFiveSix videos or videos in general of bands are really, people, someone in a more isolated scene will watch a video and they'll basically learn the mosh moves of whatever they're seeing in the video. So it's basically had more of a globalizing effect that's normalizing certain dance moves or expectations for a show. So in that sense, I don't see much variation anymore. I feel like when I go to a show, I know what I'm going to expect to see. I'm going to see a couple people crowd killing, and I'm going to see a big fucking horseshoe. And I'm not going to see a lot of people push up front. Again, that's coming from my relatively limited observations. I mean, I go to a lot of shows on the East Coast. I'm only at the West Coast maybe once or twice a year. But judging from what I've seen, it just seems there's a uniform sense of what to expect at a show at this point, regardless of where I am.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I didn't really think about it in those terms of the sort of, democratization of, a typical show behavior. Cause prior, like you said, prior to the fact that, people had access to how things operated across, different areas of the world. Yeah, you'd hear anecdotal stories, you'd be like, oh, dude, Syracuse is brutal or whatever. And it's like, that you're like, oh, right. Okay. And then you go there and you're just like, oh yeah, it's kind of like a normal show. It's like, oh yeah, maybe there's, a larger 300-pound dude moshing as opposed to 180-pound dude, but there's not much difference there.
Right. And again, in the early era of hardcore, the 80s, there was always, regional differences in style of dancing. You had circle pits in one region, you had push pits in other regions, and pogoing. And so I think that we've certainly lost that. And again, I think that's just a product of how we consume our culture now. We consume it through video, we consume it through pictures and live streams, whatever it is. And I think that that's no knock. That's not a knock on anyone. It's just that's just the nature of how we consume culture and consume media and shape our own representations of how these events should be experienced. And I was talking to someone in Turnstile, and he was he's noticed that people go off to Turnstile in a very unique way. People are more inclined to come up on stage and dance and do things that you won't see during a beatdown band. And they've sort of noticed that the more they travel, they're seeing that sort of style of response converge. So, they'll play in another country and they'll, again, so now that they've been around for a while, it's like, it's expected what they're going to see. But early on, they were noticing that the more they played out and the more that certain videos were going viral, they were noticing a convergence of how the response was happening to their set. So I think like when you have a new band that's doing something completely novel relative to other bands in the scene and like people are responding in a unique way, it's very interesting to see how that response permeates out from, whether permeates from where they play a lot to other regions where they haven't played yet. But then once they start playing there, then that sort of response and reaction assumes the what's expected. Basically, like I said, it converges on a general type of response. So it's expected what they're going to get.
Sure. Yeah. It's like the law of averages, it's like, oh, okay. Like that's kind of what's expected at this show. I see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I want to hit on was I really like the fact that you document bands, from across all different spectrums of independent music. Cause, I mean, your tastes are clear. And like you said, you will film bands that you don't particularly like, but you feel like it's important for one reason or another. And I think that pushes up against the convention of a lot of people who are, more so when you're younger, your vision of music is very myopic. You're like, I am only listening to hardcore or whatever. I presume that's a really important part of what it is that you do to, not only expose people to new bands, like you were saying, but also kind of hopefully stretch people to maybe consider something like, whatever, random band like Senses Fail. Most people would just be like, oh, they put out a couple hardcore records, and most people would not know that,
Yeah.
And so I presume that's important to you.
Yeah, no, for me, it's important to, film across the board. Again, it's like I have a certain set of interests that I like, but I will film anything that I think is important to document, whether it's tangentially related to hardcore and punk or if it's just something random. Like I'll film, if you dig into the site, there are videos of hip hop artists and there are videos of like singer-songwriters that have no connection to hardcore, but it's just like, oh, this is a cool thing and I want to film. I'm allowed to film it. I'm going to go do it. So for me, it's like, as much as it is a archive of hardcore and punk, it's also just like, I'm just documenting my personal experience. And like, I like hip hop, so I'm going to go film this hip hop show. Like, if no one watches it, if none of my typical hardcore fans watch it, like viewers watch it, then that's fine. But for me, it's like, I'm going to at least watch it at some point again. So, and I think the other point is, I think it's one thing that's disappearing right now in hardcore and punk is the sort of mixed lineups at shows. I think we're moving away from it, going to a show and seeing like a beatdown band and also seeing a band that has like not as heavy parts, that has more sing along things and things like that. And so for me, it gets monotonous when every band on a show is basically a derivative or they sound the same. And so again, going back to like that horseshoe discussion, which I this is one of the points that I tweeted about, was that like the lack of diversity at shows is sort of, it's preventing kids from getting a wider exposure to other types of music that's out there. So for me, it's like I will film Senses Fail, or if I'll film Thursday, because I like those bands, but also to show people like, not every band. I mean, even though those bands aren't hardcore, but like there are bands that I've filmed that are more hardcore. It's like the purpose of me filming them is to show that, you don't have to fucking punch someone in the back of the head to enjoy a show. You can actually be up front and sing along. So for me, it's important to capture that, because it's telling a story about the band, but it's also telling a story about the scene and how the community is maybe behaving is the wrong term, but they're sort of acting at that moment in time and at that era. So, looking, maybe in 10 years, I'll look back and watch this stuff and be like, man, this era was a lot of this type of dancing and, not as much as this, but I want to be able to look back and get a wide, be able to look at it from a 20,000 foot perspective, as opposed to only filming, beatdown bands and only getting a very narrow scope of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great mission, because essentially it's just
the scene that we exist in is a microcosm of the, what's happening from either a pop culture or entertainment perspective, in general. Most of it is rallying against it, but it's just a microcosm of it. And it's like a little sociological window into how this scene is behaving to, either rail against what's happening, in a larger culture. And I think it is interesting to see where it's like, people get nostalgic and lament all the time, or it's like, oh, no one has like distros or like, food not bombs tables and stuff like that. And it's like, well, yeah, because most people would not even know what to do with that if it existed in this day and age. It would just be this leper in the corner,
Yeah, right.
but I think that's really it's a good way to like you said, focus kind of what is happening at that current moment. That's really cool. Well, dude, thanks for hanging, man. I really appreciate you, giving some thoughtful responses, and it was really fun for me. Yeah,
no, I'm glad we got to finally do this. This is really cool. This is one of the more like a lot of the interviews I do are like really surface level, but this really I felt like I got to dive into more detail about things I don't always get to talk about. So I appreciate that.
It's like you just hit the mission of this podcast, my friend.
Perfect.
Ooh, yeah. I don't know why. The ooh, yeah. It just felt right. It was a little Randy Savage there, except it's not the oh, yeah. Anyways, I'm not going to do that. Thank you very much, Sonny, for coming on the show. And I always really, I genuinely mean thank you. Like, I'm not just saying it because I guess that's what you say at the end of an episode, or like, oh, thank you for listening. It's like, no, like, I really, really, really mean it. Like, this is something I very much appreciate because people are giving their time to me. You're giving your time to me. I really, really do appreciate that. So shout out to Sonny for coming on the show. And next week I have a doozy of an episode because there is a tale that is unfurled before me as we're in the middle of this interview / conversation I'm having. Lauren Cashin, who is the vocalist for a band called Sharptooth, who just recently completed a huge run on Warped Tour, the final Warped Tour. And this was such a good episode because I went into it with expectations that were, I don't know, just tempered. I was like, okay, this will be a cool chat. I'm not like a huge fan of the band. It's cool. But then once we got into it, I not only did I come away feeling much more passionate about the band, but she did. Let me put it this way. She was in a cult for a year. Okay. Let's just put that out there. All right. So if that isn't a tease for next week, I don't know what is, but And those of you that have asked about my wife, she passed her first blood test, which was incredible. And I love that. And it feels really good to say that. She has one more test that she is actually doing this week, and hopefully the following week I will be able to report positively to you all in that as well. So anyways, until then, please be safe, everybody.
When the world gets in the way of your music, try the new Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds 2. Next-gen earbuds uniquely tuned to the shape of your ears. They use exclusive Bose technology that personalizes the audio performance to fit you, delivering the world's best noise cancellation and powerfully immersive sound, so you can hear and feel every detail of the music you love. Bose Quiet Comfort Earbuds 2. Sound shaped to you. To learn more, visit Bose.com.